1. This happened about 10 years ago, and I've told people about it through the years, but I'm always left with blank stares and people thinking that I'm crazy. I've stopped telling it because of this, but I figured this would be the best place to get it out. The story goes that I was a year out of high school and wasn't working much while commuting to college. I spent a lot of my time with my best friend and her boyfriend at his house. His family had moved south one state due to job reasons, but because of his financial situation, he made more money working less time up here than down there, so he didn't move. This gave us a house to ourselves all around our late teens, early 20s. It lasted about a year or so, because after the majority of the family moved, the payments on the house proved too much for his income, and we all knew it was going to be foreclosed one day. The house was haunted with the usual hauntings in the beginning. The sound of footsteps on the second floor when no one was there. A rocking chair in the back room that would ever so slightly rock back and forth. A child's toy that kept appearing in different places, even though no one touched it. Normal haunting stuff. During the winter, there wasn't enough money to pay off the heat, so it was turned off for a couple days. This was when the hauntings went from innocent stuff to a little scarier. My friends would wake up in the night and see someone walking out of their room. The faucets would turn on with them sitting in the other room. Everyone refused to enter the basement at night, because it always felt like you were being watched. As spring came, this all started becoming normal to us, and we honestly didn't think much of it. Spring came and went, without much happening, but when summer happened, it started getting worse. The power was eventually cut to the house a month or two before it was finally foreclosed, and this is when everything went into overdrive. The first time I ever felt unsafe was when my friends decided to go get food and left me alone to watch the house. We had a battery-operated stereo and candles, and that was about it. I was listening to the radio but kept getting the feeling that I was being watched. With the dancing shadows from the candles, it eventually freaked me out so much that I put a blanket over my head and stayed huddled with the stereo. The entire time I felt like someone was standing right next to the blanket, so I stayed there without moving for 15 minutes until they returned. A few nights later was the night that the worst happened. We were only a week or so away from the house being foreclosed, and I got a text to come on over. I walked into the house to find everyone sitting in a circle staring at me. Freaked out, I asked what they were doing, and they all told me to sit down and shut up. Above, I could hear someone walking around, so when I asked who was up there, they all looked at me and said, "No one." I sat down with everyone else, 7 of us, and listened for what felt like forever. Now, mind you, this is August and the house is being lit by candles. It's hot. I'm sitting on a chair while everyone else is trying to do some, when all of a sudden, I feel cold. Really cold. I start shivering and I remember one of the girls saying, "Look at Sparkle Fritz," and everyone turned and stared at me. My body went numb, and I just started crying my eyes out. I just couldn't stop crying, and I felt overcome by this extreme feeling of sadness. I couldn't speak, but all I kept thinking about was the name Amy. This went on for maybe 30 seconds, until all of a sudden it got warm in the room again, and I immediately stopped crying. I look at my friend, who was looking at me like I was crazy, and I just told him, "The girl's name is Amy." He immediately got wide-eyed and asked me why I said that, and I told him that it just kept going through my head. He said that he kept having this dream about a little girl in the house, whose name was Amy, and that's who he thought was haunting the house. I didn't know this at all. We were all freaked out, and we decided to get a tape recorder and record EVPs if we could. Someone put the tape recorder at the top of the stairs, and we all sat at the bottom. the living room, talking like normal and asking EVP-type questions. We recorded it for about 45 minutes and then played it back. The first 20 minutes were us talking, when all of a sudden we hear a girl say something over us talking. It sounds somewhat like a girl saying, "Is there a light with a top on it?" Followed with something unintelligible. Mind you, this is over us talking, so it's not one of us. Later on you can hear the girl very audibly saying, "It's not me who's talking, it's my grandma and it's my grandpa." Followed by a deeper voice saying what sounds like, "Eat the cookie." We all freaked out, and didn't catch anything else on the recording. I took the recorder home and recorded it onto my computer so that we had it digitally. I still have it, and have no idea how to upload it, but the annoying thing is that I had to cut the majority of the non-EVP stuff, so you can hear where the edit is in the video. Everyone says that it's proof that I edited the audio, but it's not. It's simply where I cut out a bunch of worthless audio. In the end, the house was foreclosed, and that was the end of that story. I tell this story all of the time, but no one believes the audio and thinks I made up the entire thing. But I didn't. It's frustrating, and I'm hoping that leaving this here will get better results. 2. I never really believed in the paranormal, especially in ghosts or anything like that. From 4th grade to my sophomore year in high school, I went to a Christian summer camp. That being said, I was not very religious either. My final year at the camp was going to be 4 weeks, and included a 10-day wilderness trip on the Minnesota part of the Lake Superior hiking trail. We drove in a very cramped van for over 2 hours until we finally arrived. After 7 days of intense hiking and camping, we arrived at our final site. It was a cool little clearing with a loud bubbling stream. The group and I set up our tents when the counselors decided we would be doing a surprise 12-hour solo session. If you're not sure, a solo is when a group splits up far away from each other with no technology, a water bottle, a tarp, and a sense of adventure. Basically, it's really boring. To find my spot, I trudged through 30 feet of water to get to the other side beneath a 10-foot-high cliff edge. It was a very sunny day, and it was scorching hot. There were not many trees around, so I needed to get some shade. With tarp in hand, I climbed to the top of the cliff and set the tarp down. In order to hold it down, I grabbed 4 rocks about 10 inches long and 4 inches wide to put on each corner. Ah, some shade. The day before was intense and I did not get much sleep. At about 3 p.m. I decided to take a nap. I set down my aluminium water bottle as an impromptu pillow and got ready to sleep. After laying there for 30 seconds, a personal record, I fell asleep. I had a very short dream, a vision almost. It was this silver face made out of these sharp triangles and piercing orange eyes. It started screaming in some hellish language for about 15 seconds of "Glah blah glah scene." I woke up in a flash. I was stopped by something. It was a hand, a black smoking hand. It had an evil and disturbing vibe to it. I yelped, but no one could hear me over the stream. I flailed my arms and quickly stood up, but the black figure vanished. Boom! I looked behind me. In a gust of wind, the tarp was dragged up, and the 4 rocks I used to hold it up collapsed, falling 10 feet down, directly to where my head would have been. It had dented my makeshift pillow and destroyed it. Needless to say, I didn't sleep for several days. I've given this event a lot of thought. I am convinced that if I had not woken up, my skull would have been crushed. The hand was moving slowly to my face. I think that about the time it touched my face, the rocks would have hit my head. Maybe, just maybe, that was the hand of death. This theory does not explain the dream and why I woke up. If anyone could comment their thoughts, that would be great. If you have any questions, please ask me. I would really like to find some answers. 3. This whole thing probably happened around 6 or 7 years ago. I lived in the middle of nowhere, Ohio, and had to make my own fun growing up. I was around 16 at the time, and my friends and I decided to start ghost hunting on the weekends. We've experienced small stuff here and there, nothing too insane, until we went to Rogues Hollow. Rogues Hollow was this old mining town where there was fires, disease, etc., that eventually made the town cease to exist. It's now a national or state park. I'm not sure, one of the two. But anywho, we decide it's worth exploring. First off, this place is in the middle of absolute nowhere. I drove a '98 Chrysler Concorde in those days, and it was an absolute chore getting there. The gang shows up. There's a total of 4 of us. It's getting pretty late, and we notice the house, lodge, where the park ranger stays, so we park a bit off to avoid getting caught. Didn't work out too well. 5 minutes later, we are being questioned by an old guy who was the lone park ranger. He ended up being pretty cool, and ended up telling us some of his personal experiences. He said we could continue on if we promised not to do any witchcraft or satanic rituals. Apparently that was a big problem he was dealing with. At this point, we ventured back into the woods where the town previously was at, and stuff started getting weird. We would hear what sounded like pickaxes, men working, and voices in a lot of different directions. Needless to say, we were getting a bit on edge. We decided to start recording on our little EVP device we had. We were getting words like fire, death, devil, collapse. Eventually, we stumbled on an old house. It definitely wasn't inhabitable, and was about 50% burnt down. One of the others and myself decided to go inside of the house, while the other 2 stayed back. As we approached the door, we turned back to our friends to give us the old wish us luck, and they were sheet white, looking at the second story of the building. Directly above us, looking out of the window, down at us, was a man from the shoulders up, and slightly transparent. He then disappeared, not leaning back into the house, just boom, gone. Usain Bolt would have been proud of my sprint time leaving that place. Fast forward to the next day, and we decided to go back and explore in broad daylight. We were walking 2 groups of 2, about 10 yards apart, one in front of the other. I was in the back 2. About 100 yards into the wood line, and all of a sudden my friend and I both get grabbed on our shoulder, simultaneously hearing a very soft but distinct "hello." At the same time, we turned and booked it out of there. I haven't been back since. 4. Okay, so what I'm going to say is all true. My brother, who I am going to say his name is Adam, not his real name. Adam did something stupid and did meth. He didn't tell me for a few weeks. Apparently it's really popular with the gay community. Anyway, he got off it, but he felt like something attached itself to him. Now I thought he was full of himself because our family is more spiritual gifted. By that, I mean we can sense when there is another presence with us in the house or room. I am the weakest one in that department, but most spiritual of the family as I go to church and worship God. I can only feel the presence and location of the entity in the room, but others of my family range from seeing and being able to talk to them. Anyway, I didn't feel any presence at all, and just thought he was full of it. He has had non-stop nightmares for weeks, constantly betting him down and telling him no one is there for him, in various vivid, detailed dreams. But it's not only dreams he has experienced. When he was on a road trip due to work, and stopped for the night in Laramie, Wyoming, In the middle of the night, he woke up to 10 to 15 shadow people surrounding his bed, leaning over him, looking down on him, and he felt like they were there for hours. He felt weak. He could hardly move. He was calling out to his road trip partner in the other bed, but he didn't wake up, and that's all he remembers of it. Like it was wiped from his memories. When he got back, our family came to visit us. They live in another state, far away, 12-hour drive away, so Adam and me gave up our beds for them to use while we slept on the couch. And what happened that night to us made me believe something was after him. I woke up at least 8 times and checked on him. You know, being a good brother because he was paranoid. But every time I would get an unsettling feeling. The 6th time I woke up, it was pitch black. It never gets pitch black in the living room, so I looked over to the TV and realized it was a blackout. So I grabbed my phone and saw it was 4:45 a.m. And I felt really scared. But I sucked it up and told myself it was in my head, and I went back to sleep. Now, the way the couch is positioned, it's an L-shaped couch, and I was in the recliner on my side, facing the kitchen. I could see Adam sleeping on the couch, and behind that section of the couch is the kitchen. I woke, but I kept my eyes shut. I could feel something. I slowly opened my eyes and saw a light in the kitchen, at the fridge, a low blue light. I guess you can say it looked like a low setting of a phone's background light, coming from the floor, and my first thought was, don't move. And think this through, it's probably 5 in the morning, and the sun hasn't come up yet. We are currently in a blackout, so it should be pitch black. All of the family members are asleep in their rooms. When that last thought hits me, I felt a chill down my spine. So I slowly reached for my phone, all the while looking at the light, and when I touched my phone, the light disappeared. I instantly pulled my phone up, pointing it to the kitchen, and nothing was there. So I got up and slowly proceeded into the kitchen, scared shitless, but ready to punch someone's fucking head off. But when I got in there was no one, and both the front door and back door was locked. The way the kitchen layout was, is I would have noticed someone go past me, or open and close the doors as well as lock them, since they are loud, and when I got to the pantry door, I felt a presence in the pantry. But there was nothing there. So I've been up since then watching over Adam, and I still am. God, I'm scared out of my mind. But I'm going to sleep in the same room as him, so he is able to get some sleep for the next few days. Update. Well, he went to his friends to spend the next few nights, so I can't say what happened there. But I found out the blackout affected the whole city that night, and when I got off work I had the feeling I should walk home now. I live about 3 to 4 miles away, but I walked past a store that sold affordable antiques and costumes. I just had to go in, and found out they sold sage. So I bought sage and a container to burn it in. It reminded me of the time I saw my grandmother burn it around the house when I was young. So I had my grandma that's visiting do it here, and I haven't seen or felt anything since. But I'm scared that it's just the calm before the storm, as entities like to mess with people by making them believe they are safe, then come back when least expected. 5. I'm at a loss on how to even talk about this, but I can only try and hope that if there is someone else out there experiencing the hell that I have been experiencing, that they would at least for a minute know that they are not alone. That is my current hurdle, overcoming the anxiety of not understanding what led to the circumstances that had decapitated me from my once normal life. I am 41 years old, and sadly it seems like just the other day I was 20 when it all started. At the time I had decided to move out of my mom's house and start my own life in Bradenton, Florida. So moving from the Gainesville area to Bradenton was a big deal for me. Lots of beaches, Anna Maria Island, and just that Florida feel city that would excite anyone in his 20s. I was a very sexual person, and had just recently broke up with my girlfriend of 4 years. The last person that I was permitted to love. Actually, my first love too. I can't begin to express how she made me feel as a person. I loved women, I talked about sex frequently, and relished the sight of beautiful women. My biggest dream was marriage, though. I was not a player. I loved the girlfriend that I had, but I was still nonetheless a sex addict to a degree. Due to tensions with the parents of my girlfriend at the time, and how they were pushing her not to settle with the first person she loved, we ended up going our own ways. It had a lot to do with why I decided to move out of my comfort zone and start a new life, somewhere new, and hope to maybe find my true soulmate, the real deal, and that I would find her in Bradenton. I was living in my own fantasy. I moved up to a 2-1 apartment with my friend, and his dad, who was one of those cool hippie-type guys in his 40s that smoked pot and talked a lot. Talked about cool stuff from the 70s and 80s, and for some reason, this guy was also fascinated with reading the Bible and explaining the stories of the Bible to me and his son while we were all high on pot. At that time, I was an agnostic. I never thought it was fair for me to say whether or not a higher being existed or not. How would I possibly know? That is why I enjoyed listening to these Bible stories while I was high in the hopes of hearing something that would help guide in the right direction, and most importantly, initiate a little sense of faith in my life, that there are things in life we just can never understand. We are so petty. Humans think that they know all the answers, and just because their science says one thing, it makes everything else a farce. I wanted answers. 1 week after I moved into the apartment, my friend came running out of the room, claiming he saw a shadow and that it lunged towards him. Every hair on my friend's body was standing, and his face was pale. I immediately felt panicked myself, and noticed it with my irregular breathing. He scared the shit out of me. I slowly walked towards the room, wondering if I should retreat and ignore it, without giving out the idea that I was afraid. However, as I got closer to the door, I felt the hairs on my arms and the back of my neck stand up, and a complete sense of dread filled me. I did not want to look, even through my peripheral vision, at what had scared my friend so much that a large man would come running out of the room, scared as a kid who saw a ghost under his bed. The room was very dark, but my eyes had already adjusted to where I could still see a bit. Holding on to the edge of the entryway to the room, I lost my balance, and without any warning, I was pulled into the room, and I immediately felt a shock of electricity through my body. It felt bad, and really the best way I can describe that feeling was nasty, evil, not normal. I looked behind me to see what my friend and his dad were doing, and they were just looking at me, not even trying to help me. They looked at me as though they wanted to help me, but couldn't, and started to make their way towards the living room. What the fuck is happening to me? I honestly could remember one of my thoughts being that I felt like I was in an episode of The Twilight Zone, but this was worse. There was this smell of death that breezed by my nose, and it was awful. I was standing, but my body was fully stiff. The only thing I could seem to move were my eyes, and I made sure I kept looking down. I wouldn't dare look up at whatever was taking control over me. What is this? And how can I avoid looking at it? Please, please end. How will this end? Is this a ghost? A demon? Immediately after those thoughts, I heard a small raspy whisper that said, "None." I slowly tried to look up, just to have at least an idea of what it was that was trying to harm or kill me. But I can honestly say that it was just a blackish figure, with white misty trails around it. but I didn't look long enough to completely distinguish that. All of a sudden, something really hard and with force grabbed me by the groin. I could feel the pain in that area grow into my stomach. I felt energy being drawn out of me. I felt weaker, scared, highly increased heart rate, and moments from dying of a heart attack. I am being attacked by the unknown. I screamed, but nobody helped me. My friend and his dad did not come, yank me out of that room. "You will live, but that's all," it said again in a raspy, creepy voice. And I then began to feel myself move again, and I ran out of that room as fast as I could. As I rushed through the living room, I screamed at the top of my lungs, "What the fuck? What happened, and why didn't you help me?" There was this look of deceit in their faces, as though they knew something I didn't. Till this day I believe this. I could not get an answer out of them, and I wanted to punch the dad in the face. Had it been his son in there, I am sure he would have done anything to help his son in that same horrifying experience. I ran towards the closet where I kept my clothes and belongings, and packed what I could and left the apartment that night. That was the last I ever saw of my friend and his dad. It took me almost 2 hours to drive back to the Gainesville area. The entire drive it was raining, and hard to see because of all the fog, and how my headlights just made it worse. I was terrified still, continuously looking in my rear mirror to see if there was anything in my back seat. If you thought that was the end of it for me, you are dead wrong. I never from that moment on had sex again. Whatever it was that grabbed me, rendered me impotent. I have seen every doctor I can about it. No Viagra, no pills, no surgery. Whatever it was took away from me my manhood, my livelihood, my sense of confidence in my gender, and what I was here on earth to do. I could never get married, have children, fall in love, etc. Here I am today writing about it, many, many years later. I actually took the courage to talk about this nightmare with someone else, and that is you, the reader. I have not touched a female since then. Everything I was died on that night. Strangely and oddly, I remember clearly what that abomination told me. You will live. He meant just that. I am just living. I can't wait to die. And I will not take my own life. I don't want to see that sight again. I will just continue to live alone, suffering in my own misery. Just remember, you can't explain everything in life. I am a prime example of that. Enjoy what you have, and love what you have. Hey everyone, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 5 True Paranormal Stories, episode 46. Thanks very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Well, hope you're all having a nice Friday. As many of you are listening to this, I'll actually just be starting recording on the weekends videos. Still haven't decided what I'm doing on Sunday yet. But I do have options already available of things I've tried before, if I can't find anything fresh to try, so don't worry, we're sorted story-wise. We'll definitely have something interesting up. Now, I don't know, this might be a potentially embarrassing moment, but as you've heard me mention in previous videos, I've got people nearby me who are doing some sort of, I guess, home improvements, and they seem to like to start them quite late at night. I assume they're doing the work themselves, and they're doing it after they get home from work. So that means that sometimes 6:30, tonight it was about 7:25, a lot of drilling or sanding or something started, and just after it did, because I was kind of in mid-record, you know, and was actually doing quite well this evening, looked like I was going to be done earlier. Because a lot of the times when I'm getting held up, it's because I'm having to stop to wait for silence. But it was looking like I was going to be finished early tonight, and I still am actually, so thankfully. But as soon as they started up, I shouted quite loudly, "Oh, fuck off!" And I don't know if they heard me, but they did shut up quite quickly after that. So, yeah. I never speak to my neighbours, so I'll probably never know if it was or not. Okay, and with that I'm going to head off for now, so until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.